Thank you everyone for coming back from lunch promptly. We appreciate that. So if I haven't met you yet, my name is Ellen Lovell. I'm a postdoc who works very closely with Steph Agee and James Davis, who's floating around. Really excited to introduce our next speakers. So I'm introducing Kate Hollenbach and Xin Xin. And Xin is a Taiwanese-American artist, educator, and nonprofit executive who explores the creative potential of community-driven technology. As creator of TogetherNet and co-curator of the Critical Coding Cookbook, Xin facilitates consensus and social engagement in digital spaces. Their work has been exhibited internationally at a very long list of impressive places that are truncated for the purpose of this bio. And currently, Xin is serving as the co-executive director at Processing Foundation and teaches art, feminism, and computation at the New School. That's correct, right? Yes, very cool. Meanwhile, Kate is an artist, programmer, and educator. She's passionate about using open source tools and teaching in interdisciplinary environments where art and technology meet. She's also presented and exhibited her work at a number of impressive places. And Kate is the president of the board of directors for the Processing Foundation, a contributor to P5JS, as well as the education director at Gray Area, a San Francisco-based nonprofit and cultural incubator. So I'm really excited to introduce Kate and Xin because I have a long-standing relationship with processing and with P5JS. First as a user of processing, having been a grad student at the lab where processing has common roots, then teaching with processing, which you'll hear more about these tools, but processing is a really cool way to be creative with code. So I taught a class of processing and creative coding for non-programmers. And then most recently I've had students, HBCU students that I work with in the summertime, actually contributing to P5JS with so much amazing support. Just really inspiring to see the way that these communities support new contributors. So the TLDR is that I'm just so inspired by these projects. And you know, their communities, they're so committed to equity, diversity, inclusivity, accessibility, mentorship, and creativity. So it's such a treat to have Kate and Xin here to talk with us today, and I will let them take it over from here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Emily, for such a kind and generous introduction. Xin and I are really happy to be here today, and I'm particularly excited to be here and meet all of you. This is actually 3 months ago to the day I moved to the Bay Area, so I'm just really excited to be meeting so many people locally that are passionate about open source and the community building that goes with it. So today, Xin and I are going to talk about code education and how that can lead into code contribution for open source projects. Let's get my presenter notes back here. The Processing Foundation is a small nonprofit with 8 employees and 8 volunteers serving as our board of directors. Xin is our co-executive director, along with Roxana Haddad, and they both just started working for the foundation in this capacity in the last 2 or 3 months, which has been absolutely wonderful and thrilling for me. I also work at Gray Area, which is an art and tech space in San Francisco, and we host educational programming including workshops and courses using open source software for the arts. Our mission at the Processing Foundation is directly at the intersection of art and technology with a really strong focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're not just an arts organization that wants to teach artists how to learn to code. We're also a technology organization that wants to teach engineers and coders how to make art. And all of the weird things that happen in between those two extremes. we really feel that both of these fields have a lot to offer each other. And fundamentally, I think this is also about agency. How do we empower people to make their own creative works and creative tools using software, like writing software? And education is a really core part of what we do. So a lot of computer science education, my background is in computer science, starts here. How do you code? Okay. And when I was an undergrad learning computer science, it was using an editor that looked something like this. This is called Edwin, and it is an editor for the Scheme programming language. And it doesn't even have any buttons for running the code. You need to know some like keyboard shortcut commands before you can even start writing the code. And to add insult to injury, it also doesn't even use the standard operating system controls for cut and paste. So everything that you know about computers, if you've got some basic computer literacy, is wrong when you use this editor. If you have a generous teaching assistant in college, they may tell you, oh, it's easy. It's just the same keyboard shortcuts as Emacs, right? What's Emacs? If you've never heard of this software before, it's not really a helpful suggestion. And so this was something that was like really challenging for me as a beginner, and also kind of discouraging and off-putting. But fortunately, the software that I get to teach my students with looks more like this. It's friendly. It's there's a bright pink, or in this high contrast mode, yellow play button that calls the viewer's attention. There's a clear area to type text in. And as I think about this tool, I think it's not just about the interface. It's also about how the API is designed to get people into writing graphics and interactivity into their projects that we're really excited about faster. And I think back to an early experience I had. I was very lucky and fortunate to go to a high school that had an AP computer science program. And we had this textbook. There was a C++ textbook because that was the language that AP computer science was in at that time. And I was so excited. Chapter 13, the last chapter of the book, was about graphical user interfaces. And we got to the end of the school year and we only covered chapters 1 through 12. And I was so sad because that was like the part of the course that I was there for. I was like, I'm learning all this coding stuff because I have to, but I want to make stuff that's in chapter 13. And I think that's something that's really novel about P5.js and its predecessor processing, is that it really helps you get to that part where you're just there making things appear on the screen as quickly as possible. And to show you what I mean by this, I'm going to just do a quick demo. So this is the P5.js editor. It's online. You can just sign up with an account. And by default, it's got some code that you can run to just make this background gray rectangle. But very quickly, I can learn a few quick commands to make something that follows my cursor around, for example. And I just hit the play button here. And now I've made something interactive. I just had to add one line of code to the template. If I want to do something a little different, I might not have this draw 60 frames, a second, refreshing the background, but I might do this only once in the setup function here instead. And now I've got this kind of like drawing tool that lets me leave a mark here without refreshing. And then if I want to get really fancy, I might check if the mouse is pressed before I draw a circle. And now I have a drawing tool. I'm like halfway off to MS Paint, and this is like so easy for me to do with this API that I can do it in front of all of you in like under a minute, even when I'm really nervous, right? Like in a public speaking capacity. So I think that it's not just about the kind of presentation of the interface, but also the tool itself kind of enables you to really get into the what of what you're making with the code as quickly as possible. But there's this other question, right? That's not just how do I code or what is code, but why do I code, right? What attracts a young student to wanting to make code? And for a lot of them, it's I want to make something. I want to produce something that is useful to other people, or I have an idea and I want to see it become a reality. And I think that's a really important part of what the tools we build with the Processing Foundation make possible in an educational context. Our documentation is full of fun examples of things that you can do interactively. But if you look really closely, all of the core computer science fundamentals are still there. So it's how do I organize my code with functions when I'm designing a landscape, right? As the computer graphics output, or how do I make a game where I'm using loops and arrays to have a race between two different characters that are in the space? Or how do I make some fun filters and also for my webcam while I'm also learning something about how digital color works and is modeled for a computer. So a core part of how we operate is not just in building the tools, but in also creating an open source environment where not only can people use the tools that we build as their creative medium, writing software, but they also can be contributors to the project. They can shape its direction. They can help make the project better. And a big part of this is the idea of coding an agency. How can you empower someone to not only be a user of tools, but an author and creator of tools? So I'm going to hand this over to Xin to talk more about our projects.
Thank you, Kate. Hi, everybody. So this is Xin, and I am the co-executive director of community and programs at the Processing Foundation. So I'm going to share a little bit more about the specific software projects we develop and maintain and promote at the foundation. We actually have a whole kind of ecosystem. I'm going to highlight 3 projects today. These projects started around 20 years ago when 2 people from the MIT Media Lab took a series of advice from their MIT advisor, John Maeda, from his book, The Laws of Simplicity. And the idea is, the question here, the prompt is how do you approach tool making through the lens of simplicity, where we can really think about undesigning and subtracting the obvious and replacing that with the meaningful. So, to jump a little bit forward and to talk about just like the kind of tools that the foundation has been building and what it does. We really believe, and we have seen a lot of evidence of that creative coding is a vehicle to really radically broaden access to code education, generally speaking. And this is one, a slightly more evolved example, yet around 30 to 40 lines of code that shows how one can create a visualization of a fractal. So here I had the sketch up here. Again, this is not online editor. And as you can see, not pretty short over here, pretty short lines of code, but what you can do is, getting students to learn how to code and how to approach, creating a very simple algorithm while having a great sense of reward, understanding that, what they're creating is immediately shareable. I mean, at this point in time, I think I have a lot of students who are just constantly sharing their interactive sketches on social media and on their website, etc. And really kind of also really promote this idea that there's no, there isn't a outcome or a contribution that is too small, right? And kind of really amplifying the outcome to encourage participation through code education. So here are some research There's definitely a lot of research done over the years on how creative coding can broaden access to code education, but this particular chart that's kind of interesting was one that's conducted around our tool processing, which is a Java tool, right? At Bryan Marr College, which is a private liberal arts women's college in Pennsylvania. As you can see, one of the survey question was that there was at least one homework that I spent extra time on because I thought it was cool. and this kind of like as innocuous as this seems, the statement, it's really hinting at something that we find very precious, which is engagement. How do we facilitate deeper engagement across different demographics and people who might otherwise not be so interested in code or don't see themselves as a computer science students? And how do we actually connect with them and eventually, hopefully, cultivate and build them up to become code contributors? So to get a little bit deeper into like a specific project, this is one of the first tools that the foundation has, built and maintained, processing Java. So it's written in Java. The website itself has like 15,000 daily site visitors. We have about 2.6 million site visitors in the past year. This particular tool, because it's been around for about 20 years, it's got a very broad reach internationally. There are people who are, using processing either to, study like in colleges or in grad school or in, even in K-12 level to a degree, and also using it for industry purposes, right? So oftentimes these tools can be used to like create interactive installation or prototyping. And also, we have over 100 community contributed software libraries, and a lot of this, facilitating that and kind of getting someone to get to a level where they can start to contribute their first library is oftentimes like the way we kind of that's one of our goals because we do believe that like writing a library and making sure that we show a guideline on how to do that is one of the best way to start cultivating contributors. We also have this project, P5JS, which is in many ways the JavaScript version of processing with its own certain updates and nuance that has been built throughout the years. This particular site has 50,000 daily site visitors. This project is being led by Chen Ye, who is our project lead for P5JS. The previous project processing is led by Raphael. This particular tool, because it's compatible in the browser, it is being taught just across K-12 schools and universities worldwide. And we're really proud of our new website. So feel free to go and take a look at p5js.org. Really a big emphasis is making sure that we are spending a significant amount of our time and resources on building tutorials and references and making sure that they're legible and beginner friendly. This is our third project, the P5JS web editor. This is led by Rachel Lin. So this again, it's connected to the P5JS software, and this what we'll be showing in the demo are like an example of how the P5JS web editor works. And I would say this was such a milestone for the organization because what it really allowed was, for teachers who are teaching absolute beginners to be able to just jump on a URL and start coding. Not to download anything, they don't have to set up anything. They simply just, they can begin to code and begin to see immediate result without, having to work for an entire semester. And so, for us, really kind of thinking not just why contribute, because the more contributor we have is obviously great for the project and the organization, but also who gets to contribute, right? And that for us is really important. And I think how do we broaden the access of that if we're going to build tools for ourselves, who do we include, right? Or if we're going to build tools for others, who are the others? How do we bring that others in here? So that's that's kind of a lot of the questions that we ask, and a lot of our efforts and community outreach and even design of the software itself really respond to that question of access and how we broaden it. Yes, I mean, some of these information might be completely new to you, but if you visit open source survey.org, you can see that as of 2017, there may be newer data is required. 3% of open source contributors are women and 1% are non-binary, right? So one like specific example in terms of like how the P5JS project specifically broaden access is by adopting this all contributor specification. It's asking the question of like, what if we, you always like, it's more of a approach of like civic tech perhaps, but then an approach of like a traditional software company, right? What if we bring different stakeholders in the room and see what kind of conversation they can have together and go from there. It's gonna take longer, but we are interested in outcome because we feel like, it's more inclusive and perhaps it will land on a very different place if we have different skill sets in the room. So here's an example, of like how one may be a contributor. In many ways, one doesn't even need to contribute to code. You can start by organizing a workshop. You can start by organizing a meetup, and you can still yet be recognized, acknowledged as a contributor, right? So we're kind of like really flattening the hierarchy of what's considered as contribution through many of like the approaches of our governance and managing of the contributor base. All of our projects are maintained publicly on GitHub. Go ahead and feel free to take a look and, look around, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. This is, just like a little screen recording of like all the contributors we have. I think the P5JS project today had like about 635 contributors. And we continue to grow our community and continue to kind of sustain and cultivate them and making sure that, we're not repeating certain kind of barriers of participation, especially as it comes to open source code contribution. Thank you. And I think we can move to Q&A. Yes.
Where do you want to go next?
It's a very good question. I just started 3 months ago, and we're figuring out. We're in the process of figuring that out. It's a very, very good question. I think one thing that we do recognize is that education is really the core of the mission, right? I think that for us, it's really about creating this feedback loop, this reciprocal kind of like give and take kind of model and system, regardless of whether it's in K-12 or university or, adult education, community-centric education in other ways. And which is also why I am particularly excited to be here with everyone, because I think that there is a great, great, great potentials of working with, academics, working with university, undergraduate students or graduate students, and designing different ways for them to participate. I think there's a lot of value there to work with educators instead of, project managers, when it comes to like thinking about open source contribution. I think that there can be a very different kind of approach to be imagined when it comes to, just how can we make the whole process a little bit, like a little bit more inclusive, a little bit gentler, a little bit kinder, and with more hand holding when it's needed. So that's kind of, that's part of what we're thinking to like really invest and double down on partnership and relationship with educational sectors.
Maybe following up on that question, do you have a sense of where your users go next? Like often in kind of contained environments, it's really supportive and kind of go from 0 to somewhere very quickly, and it's really encouraging, and then you step out of that bubble, and it can be hard to kind of like be among everyone else and tackling these things right now. So do you have a sense of like where people launch and where they connect project wise or contribution wise?
Do you want to say something?
Sure. I mean, I think there are some other ways of contributing to other projects. There's one 3JS, which is really great for people who are into 3D graphics. And sometimes our contributors will get really excited about that aspect of doing creative work and want to contribute to other similar projects like that. I think there is also, part of our hope in some of our research is that some of the models that we use to make our work more inclusive for contributors starts to become popular for other projects. And so some of our contributors also go on to help other organizations with their code content because they like the way that worked working with us. And we think that that's also a really great measure of success is kind of seeing some of the ways that we work be adopted by other organizations and seeing some of our contributors get to be the people who lead and spearhead that in the other spaces they work.
But I guess my question is, you say more about that. I'm interested in how the focus on education and includes the definition of contributing, helps build a robust community around these projects and one that helps sustain the project and to what degree that's exportable to other projects. Have you seen some things be more effective than others, some things that seem more relevant to your project than others?
Yeah, I mean, I think some things are just in the way that the all contributors specification is not something that we developed. It's something that we use that's developed by another organization. I'm unsure of the name at the moment. But it's that idea, and also I think in some ways these things are becoming easier to do in the tools, like seeing GitHub make it so that you can submit a pull request for documentation in some markdown files without even having to really know what Git is. You can kind of edit in the browser now, is a part of how you make the tool itself welcome different kinds of contributions by lowering that. So we see some other things like that, not just in the tools themselves, but in platforms that people use as kind of things that we're excited about and hope to see more of.
So what kind of projects artists create?
Sure. Okay, so I think there are kind of what kind of projects? I think there are maybe two possible answers here. I think one is the question of what kind of project can the artists create using our tools as in users of our tools. Is that kind of where you're getting at? Okay. So I think that perhaps even if one isn't familiar with the idea of creative coding, if one is familiar with the idea of software development, might have heard of this idea of daily practices and coding, writing a little bit of code every day as a kind of way to do that with skills. And so this is an example of what daily practice looks like using P5.js, right? And this is documented over the span of a year by this, I believe, Netherlands-based, just visual interaction designer named Xin Xin. And very much, I teach this stuff too, so I see I'm like, oh, okay, so a lot of kind of for loops, nested for loop, and kind of reiteration and remixing of that in multiple ways, and then things get complex over time, and so yeah, I think this can be turned into, this can just live on a website, or it can be turned into a big, large-scale installation. This can be combined with interaction, like live feedback, real-time feedback interaction by connecting to a camera or a you know, or some kind of like gestural like recognition system. And there's many different possibilities there, depending on which direction one wants to go. But yeah, I think that there's generally, I would say like two different, maybe more than two, but yeah, like two different like ways of kind of approaching this. Some people see this as like making sketches, like doodling with code, right? And so not necessarily artists who are, you know, thinking of selling this in a gallery per se, but the more that, you know, they're learning how to code, so they're just like integrating that into their practice. Many people who make stuff with P5JS don't identify as artists, and that's actually maybe the majority of them, because this is so broadly used in schools, especially undergraduate, university and K-12 system, that, you know, oftentimes it's just being used as a way to learn how to code, and oftentimes applied in just like environments where whether like sometimes it's, you know, as a way to like provide the software on ramping, and also provide a better greater reward from the start, if that makes sense. So, sure. Any other questions?
Can I have one final question, which is, there's more and more students who are attending, and that we work with on campus, and if you work with students, do you have any advice that you would give a student who's thinking about contributing, or any new contributor that's like, you know, we're all familiar with like, go read the README, go like something that, I don't know, anything else you would say to encourage someone thinking about becoming a contributor?
I know that like the go read the README is oftentimes like the most kind of direct and obvious way to kind of direct someone. What I have also found is that, you know, even that gap between telling someone that they can go there versus them actually going there and making a very, at times, very public kind of like commentary or you know, action to a project that has a lot of kind of name recognition. It's very stressful. It's scary. You know? And so I think that there is that gap between like, you know, someone who has a desire to do something to contribute versus someone who actually go and do it, that we're really actively trying to bridge. And so I guess I'm currently developing this plan with our team. And, you know, I say generally speaking, if you're interested, like send us an email. We'll add you to our mailing list, and we'll reach out to you once we're ready to start the project together.
I'll mention a couple other things just quickly. We have through the foundation, we have a few other opportunities that are nice for beginners. We have some fellowship programs that are for early to mid-career developers who want to contribute to a project. Some of them who have participated are in the room today. Hi, Sonia. And I would encourage them to apply to some of those opportunities. And Samir was telling me at lunch that here at UC Santa Cruz, you all have like you work with Google directly for Google Summer of Code, and I would encourage them to kind of seek you all out to get some experience there, because I think it can be so helpful to just feel like, oh, I got selected for this. I have the permission to contribute, right? And not being selected is also not permission to contribute, but sometimes that additional support of, I have a mentor to talk to every week about my project and progress can be helpful for when that like imposter syndrome and self-doubt creeps in.
I guess I just thought of one more thing. You know, if you are a educator, if you are a teacher teaching in universities, you know, and if you're interested in having your students contribute to one of the project, P5JS or the P5JS editor or processing, you know, I welcome you to reach out or go on GitHub and like take a look at our software roadmap and see if there's any interest or alignment or overlap in terms of like, working together, and we can, you know, develop something together, and that can, you know, hopefully be meaningful from a curricular and educational perspective, but also for the larger open source community.